The rain hammered against the windshield so hard that Amelia Parker wondered if her boss had finally lost his mind sending her out in weather like this. But when you worked for the most exclusive private transportation company in Manhattan, and they said drive, you drove. She gripped the steering wheel of the black Mercedes sedan and checked the address one more time on her phone. The pickup was at some luxury high-rise in Midtown, and her passenger was someone important enough that her supervisor had called her personally at 6 in the morning to make sure she understood the assignment. Week-long conference trip upstate. Same passenger every day. Professional at all times. She had been driving for elite clients for 3 years now. Ever since she graduated with a business degree, she could not afford to use for anything except impressing the hiring manager at Executive Drive Solutions. The pay was decent, the tips were better, and she had learned to perfect the art of being invisible while somehow also being impeccable. The doorman at the building rushed out with an oversized umbrella as she pulled up to the curb. A man in a charcoal suit emerged from the glass doors, and Amelia felt her breath catch for just a second before she reminded herself that good-looking passengers were part of the job. She had driven actors, athletes, and more than a few men who thought their money made them irresistible. This one was tall, dark-haired, and moved with the kind of confidence that came from never having to prove anything to anyone. She got out quickly despite the rain and opened the rear door, keeping her expression neutral and professional. "Good morning, sir." He paused, water already darkening his shoulders, and looked at her with sharp green eyes that seemed surprised to find her standing there. "Morning. You are my driver for the week." "Yes, sir. Amelia Parker. I will be taking you to the Northbridge Conference Center and back each day." Something shifted in his expression, but he just nodded and slid into the back seat. She closed the door, hurried back to the driver's seat, and pulled smoothly into traffic. The rain made everything slower, but she knew Manhattan like she knew her own heartbeat. Every shortcut, every timing of every light, every way to shave 3 minutes off a trip that should take 30. "The file said your name was Marcus," he said from the back seat, his voice deep and slightly amused. "My colleague had a family emergency. I am his replacement." She kept her eyes on the road, professional. "I apologize for any inconvenience." "No inconvenience, just unexpected." There was a pause. "I am James Oakes." She recognized the name immediately, though she kept her reaction carefully hidden. James Oakes was the founder and CEO of Oakes Industries, a manufacturing empire that had revolutionized sustainable production methods and made him a billionaire before he turned 35. She had read an article about him in some magazine at a coffee shop once. Self-made, brilliant, and notoriously private despite his wealth. "Nice to meet you, Mr. Oakes. The drive should take about 2 hours in this weather. There are water bottles in the compartment to your right, and if you need to make any stops, just let me know." 2 hours of rain. Perfect. But he did not sound annoyed, just resigned. She heard him settle back, the rustle of papers, the click of a laptop opening. She focused on driving, on being the kind of invisible competence that earned 5-star reviews. They were 40 minutes into the drive when he spoke again. "You can talk, you know. I am not going to report you for being human." She glanced in the rearview mirror and found him watching her instead of his laptop screen. "I did not want to disturb you, sir, James, and you are not disturbing me. These reports are disturbing me." A conversation might actually help. He closed the laptop with a decisive click. "How long have you been driving?" 3 years professionally, but I have been driving since I was 16. "You like it?" It was such a simple question, but no one ever asked it. Passengers usually treated her like a particularly intelligent GPS system. I do, actually. I like being good at something. I like the independence. Every day is different. What did you study? Before this, she hesitated, then decided honesty could not hurt. Business management. But the entry-level positions in my field paid about the same as driving, with worse hours and no tips. This made more sense. Practical. He sounded approving. Not enough people think practically. They chase prestige over stability. Says the billionaire CEO, she replied, then immediately regretted it. Too familiar. Too casual, but he laughed, a genuine sound that filled the car. Fair point. Though I chased neither prestige nor stability, I just wanted to build something that mattered. The conversation flowed more easily after that. He asked her about New York, about the strangest passengers she had driven, about her favorite routes through the city. She found herself relaxing despite every professional instinct telling her to maintain distance. He was easy to talk to, with a dry sense of humor and an unexpected curiosity about ordinary things. When she mentioned she had never been to the conference center they were heading to, he told her about the area, about the hiking trails nearby, about a diner that served the best apple pie in the state. You seem to know a lot about it, she said. I grew up about 20 miles from here. Before everything else, I was just a kid from upstate New York who liked taking things apart to see how they worked. There was something in his tone, a fondness mixed with distance, that made her glance at him in the mirror again. He was looking out the window at the rain-soaked landscape, his expression unguarded in a way she suspected was rare. They arrived at the conference center just after 9. She pulled up to the main entrance and got out to open his door, but he was already stepping out, suit jacket held over his head against the rain that had softened to a drizzle. What time should I pick you up, Mr. Oakes, James, he corrected. And 6 should work. But take my number, in case things run late. He pulled out a business card and handed it to her. Their fingers brushed for a second, and she felt an unexpected jolt of awareness that she firmly pushed aside. I will be here at 6, she confirmed, pocketing the card without looking at it. Amelia, he said, and the way he said her name made her look up. Thank you for the conversation. It was the best part of my morning. Then he was gone, striding toward the glass doors while she stood there like an idiot, wondering why her heart was beating faster. She got back in the car and drove to the small lot the company had arranged for her to wait in. She had brought a book, her laptop, snacks for the day. This was the routine. Wait, read, maybe explore a little, pick up the passenger, drive back. She had done it 100 times. But as she sat there, she kept thinking about the way he had listened when she talked, like her opinions actually mattered. The way he had laughed at her joke about billionaires. The way his eyes had met hers in the mirror and held on for just a beat too long. Stop it, she told herself firmly. He was a passenger, a temporary passenger. In 5 days, this assignment would end and she would never see James Oakes again. That was how this worked. She forced herself to open her book and read, though she had to go over the same paragraph 4 times before any of it sank in. 6 o'clock came faster than she expected. She pulled up to the entrance at 5:55, and he was already waiting outside, looking exhausted in a way that expensive suits could not quite hide. He slid into the back seat with a heavy sigh. Rough day, she asked as she pulled away from the curb. Long day, productive but long. How was your day? Quiet. Read a book. Explored the town a little. Found that diner you mentioned, actually. Did you try the pie? Not yet. Seemed too early for pie. There is never a wrong time for pie, he said seriously, and she found herself smiling. The drive back was different from the morning. He was tired, less guarded, and they talked about easier things. Music they liked, places they wanted to travel, the best pizza in New York City. A debate that got surprisingly heated and made them both laugh. She learned that he had two younger sisters he was fiercely protective of, that he had not taken a real vacation in 4 years, that he still did not know how to cook anything more complicated than scrambled eggs. Traffic was worse heading back into the city, and by the time she pulled up to his building, it was nearly 9 at night. He groaned as he looked at his watch. "This is going to be the whole week, is it not? 15-hour days." "Probably," she said sympathetically. "Want me to pick you up later tomorrow, give you an extra hour of sleep?" He met her eyes in the mirror, and something warm passed between them. "You would do that. It is my job. And honestly, the morning traffic is easier if we leave at 7 instead of 6:30. 7 it is, then." "Thank you, Amelia." She watched him disappear into the building, then sat there for a moment longer than necessary before heading back to her own apartment in Brooklyn. It was a tiny studio that cost too much and had unreliable heat, but it was hers. She made herself dinner, tried to watch television, and found her mind wandering back to green eyes and an unexpected laugh. This was dangerous, she realized. Not because anything would happen. Nothing could happen. He was James Oakes, Billionaire CEO, and she was the driver assigned to him for a week. But dangerous because she was starting to look forward to tomorrow in a way that had nothing to do with professional pride, and everything to do with the way her heart had jumped when he said her name. She went to bed reminding herself of all the reasons this was stupid. The list was long and logical. But when she woke up Tuesday morning, she spent an extra 10 minutes on her appearance, telling herself it was just about being professional even as she knew it was a lie. He was waiting outside his building at 6:55, 2 cups of coffee in his hands. He got in and handed one to her before she could protest. "Black, right? I noticed yesterday you had a travel mug." She stared at the cup, touched by the observation. "Thank you. You did not have to do that. You are saving me an hour of sleep and driving me 4 hours round trip every day. Coffee is the least I can do." He settled back and took a sip from his own cup. "Also, I am told I am insufferable before caffeine, so this is really a public service." The drive became the best part of both their days, though neither of them said it out loud. They talked about everything and nothing. On Wednesday, he told her about the conference, about the innovations in sustainable manufacturing, about his frustration with competitors who only cared about profit margins. She found herself genuinely interested, asking questions that made him think, offering perspectives he had not considered. On Thursday, she told him about growing up in Ohio, about her father who had worked in a factory for 30 years before it closed, about her mother who cleaned houses to make ends meet, and still somehow made their small apartment feel like a palace. "They must be proud of you," he said quietly. "They passed away my sophomore year of college, car accident." She said it matter-of-factly, the way she always did, because pity never helped anything. "I am sorry." And he sounded like he meant it, not just offering empty condolences. "Is that why you switched from using your degree?" "Financial reasons, student loans, medical bills from the accident, a lot of things," she shrugged. "But it worked out. I am okay." Okay is a low bar. There was something fierce in his voice. You should be thriving, not just surviving. She did not know what to say to that, so she said nothing. But the words stayed with her, warming something in her chest that had been cold for a long time. Friday arrived faster than either of them wanted. Last day of the conference, last drive together. The weather had finally cleared and the morning was bright and crisp, the kind of spring day that made everything feel possible. "I have a crazy idea," James said as they headed north. "And you can absolutely say no." "What kind of crazy idea?" "The conference ends at 3 today. There are some incredible hiking trails near the center, Have you ever been hiking upstate? Never been hiking anywhere, really. Would you want to? With me, I mean. We could go for a few hours, grab dinner at that diner, head back to the city. He paused. As friends, not as CEO and driver. Just as two people who might want to spend more time together. Her heart was racing. This was crossing a line. Passengers did not invite drivers to go hiking. CEOs did not have dinner with their transportation. But when she looked at him in the mirror, she saw the same uncertainty in his eyes that she felt, and it made him human in a way that demolished every professional wall she had built. "Yes," she said, "I would like that." His smile could have lit up the entire state. "Yeah? Yeah. But if you get us lost in the woods, I am billing you overtime." He laughed, delighted, and she realized she would do almost anything to hear that sound again. The drive felt different knowing what came after. The anticipation hummed between them, electric and terrifying and wonderful. When they arrived at the conference center, he hesitated before getting out. 3 o'clock then, meet me at the north entrance, and Amelia, bring a jacket. It gets cold in the mountains. She watched him go, then immediately panicked. She had not packed for hiking. She had packed for sitting in a car for 5 days. She drove into town and found a small outdoor store where she bought a reasonable jacket and better shoes, telling herself this was practical and not at all about impressing James Oakes. At 3 o'clock exactly, she was at the north entrance. He came out wearing jeans and a pullover instead of a suit, and the casual clothes made him look younger, more relaxed. More like the kid from upstate who liked taking things apart. "Ready?" he asked. "As I will ever be." The trail started easy, winding through pine trees that smelled like every good thing she had forgotten about fresh air and open spaces. He led the way with the confidence of someone who had walked these paths before, pointing out landmarks, telling her stories about the times he had come here as a teenager to think. "I made the decision to start Oakes Industries on that ridge," he said, pointing to an outcropping of rock ahead. "I was 23, broke, and convinced I could change manufacturing if someone would just give me a chance." "How did you get the funding?" "Worked 3 jobs for 2 years, saved every penny, built a prototype in my garage. Then I pitched to anyone who would listen. Most people laughed. One woman did not. She gave me my first $100,000 investment." He smiled at the memory. "I paid her back with interest, and she is still on my board." They reached the ridge and stopped to take in the view. Miles of rolling green mountains, the sky impossibly blue, the world spread out like a promise. Amelia felt something loosen in her chest, something she had been holding tight since her parents died. "This is beautiful," she said softly. "It is." But when she glanced over, he was looking at her, not the view. The moment stretched between them, full of everything they had not said all week. Then he looked away, clearing his throat. "Come on. The best part is up ahead." The best part was a waterfall that tumbled down rocks into a crystal-clear pool. They sat on the bank, feet dangling, passing a water bottle back and forth. The sound of the water covered the silence, but it was a comfortable silence, the kind that only came from truly enjoying someone's company. "Can I ask you something?" Amelia said finally. "Anything." "Why me? Why did you want to spend today with me?" He was quiet for a long moment, watching the water. "Because this week, driving back and forth with you, has been the most normal I have felt in years. Because you talk to me like I am just a person, not a bank account or a business opportunity. Because you make me laugh, and I like who I am when I am around you." He turned to face her fully. "Because I could not let this week end without seeing if this thing between us was real or just my imagination." Her heart was pounding so hard she was sure he could hear it. "It is not your imagination. No, no." She met his eyes, steady despite the fear coursing through her. I have been trying all week to stay professional, to remember you are a passenger and this is temporary. But the truth is, I have not stopped thinking about you, about us, about what it might be like if circumstances were different. What if we made them different? He shifted closer, his knee brushing hers. What if, after today, I call you not as a passenger but as a man who wants to take you to dinner? A real dinner where we sit across from each other and I get to look at you without a rearview mirror in the way. James. His name came out breathless. You are a billionaire CEO, I am a driver. People would talk. You're bored, you're investors, they would have opinions. Let them talk. Let them have opinions. His hand found hers, warm and solid. I have spent my entire adult life building a company, making decisions based on what was smart and strategic. For once, I want to make a decision based on what feels right. And this, you, feels right. She wanted to argue, to list all the logical reasons this was complicated. But his thumb was tracing circles on her palm, and she was so tired of being practical, of putting everything else before what she wanted. Okay, she whispered. Okay? Yes, dinner. A real date. Let us see where this goes. The smile that spread across his face was worth every complication that would come. He leaned in slowly, giving her time to pull away, but pulling away was the last thing she wanted. Their lips met softly at first, tentative and testing. Then his hand came up to cup her face, and she leaned into him, and the kiss deepened into something that felt inevitable and perfect and terrifying all at once. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, he rested his forehead against hers. That was worth waiting all week for, he murmured. Only all week, she teased. Fair point. Felt like a lifetime. They stayed by the waterfall until the sun started to sink lower, talking and kissing and making plans that felt both wildly impractical and absolutely necessary. Finally, as the air grew cooler, they hiked back to the conference center where her car waited. Diner, he asked. Definitely diner. The diner was exactly as he had described it. Old-fashioned booths, checkered floors, and a waitress who called everyone honey. They ordered burgers and pie and coffee, sitting across from each other in a corner booth while the jukebox played songs from decades past. This is our first real date, Amelia said, stealing a fry from his plate. Technically, this entire week has been one very long first date. We just had a chaperone in the form of professionalism. Does that make this our second date? I think we should count this as the first and make up for lost time. He reached across the table and laced his fingers through hers. I want to do this right, Amelia. I want to take you to museums and restaurants and Broadway shows. I want to introduce you to my sisters. I want to know everything about you, every story, every dream, every ridiculous thing that makes you laugh. That sounds like more than a date. That sounds like a relationship. Is that okay? She thought about the complications, about the differences in their worlds, about all the ways this could go wrong. Then she thought about the way he looked at her, the way he listened when she talked, the way his hand felt in hers. Yes, she said. That is okay. They drove back to the city with his hand reaching forward from the back seat to rest on her shoulder, breaking every professional protocol but feeling completely natural. When she pulled up to his building, neither of them moved. I do not want this week to end, he admitted. It is not ending. It is just changing. Tomorrow, dinner, let me pick you up at 7. You do not know where I live. He pulled out his phone. Tell me. She gave him her address and he typed it in with a small smile. Brooklyn. Of course you live in Brooklyn. What is that supposed to mean? It means you are perfect. He kissed her again, slower this time, like he was memorizing the feel of it. Then he pulled back reluctantly. 7 o'clock. Wear something nice but not too nice. Somewhere between diner and ballroom. That is not helpful at all. Good. I like keeping you guessing. She drove home in a daze, her lips still tingling, her mind racing through everything that had just happened. When she finally collapsed into her small apartment, she immediately called her best friend Naomi. "I did something possibly stupid," she said when Naomi answered. "Oh no, what happened?" I kissed a passenger. There was a long pause. "Please tell me it was that hot actor from last month. Better, worse. I do not know James Oakes. The billionaire James Oakes. The one you have been driving all week and definitely not talking about constantly. That James Oakes. I was not talking about him constantly. Amelia. You mentioned him in literally every text message. I know what car he drinks, what coffee he likes, and his entire company origin story. You are smitten." "Okay, maybe a little smitten, but Naomi, he asked me out. Like an actual relationship, not just a fling, and I said yes. Did I make a huge mistake? Did it feel like a mistake when you were kissing him?" "No, it felt like everything clicking into place." "Then trust that feeling. You have been playing it safe for 3 years, working yourself to exhaustion, never taking chances. Maybe it is time to take a leap." They talked for another hour, with Naomi helping her plan an outfit and giving advice that ranged from helpful to ridiculous. When Amelia finally hung up, she felt steadier. Scared, but steadier. Saturday morning, she woke early despite having nowhere to be. She cleaned her apartment, did laundry, tried on 7 different outfits before settling on a simple black dress that Naomi had convinced her to buy months ago. At 6:30, there was a knock on her door. James stood in the hallway holding flowers, looking unfairly handsome in dark slacks and a fitted shirt. His eyes widened when he saw her. "You are stunning. You are early." I was too excited to wait. He handed her the flowers, a beautiful arrangement of tulips and roses. "Ready. Where are we going?" "It is a surprise." The surprise was a small Italian restaurant in the West Village, the kind of place with dim lighting and candles on every table and the smell of fresh bread filling the air. The owner greeted James like an old friend and led them to a private corner table. "You come here often?" Amelia asked as they settled in. "My sisters and I used to come here with our parents before they retired and moved to Arizona. It is special to me. I wanted to share it with you." The gesture touched her more than any fancy restaurant could have. They ordered wine and pasta, and the conversation flowed as easily as it had all week. But there was a new dimension now, a romantic tension that made every brush of hands feel electric. "Tell me something I do not know about you," he said as they shared tiramisu for dessert. "I sing in the shower, badly. My neighbors probably hate me. I play piano. Well, I used to. I have not had time in years." "What made you stop? Built a company, forgot to build a life outside of it." He said it lightly, but she heard the regret underneath. "I told myself once things stabilized, I would get back to the things I loved, but there is always another crisis, another deal, another emergency. Maybe you need someone to remind you that life is more than work. Is that an offer?" "Maybe." After dinner, they walked through the village, his jacket draped over her shoulders against the cool evening air. They stopped at a small jazz club where a band played smooth, sultry music, and he pulled her onto the tiny dance floor. She went into his arms like she belonged there, their bodies finding an easy rhythm together. "I am falling for you," he said quietly, his lips close to her ear. "I know it has only been a week, and that is insane, but I have never been more sure of anything." "I am falling for you too," she admitted. "And yes, it is insane, but maybe the best things are." They danced until the club closed, then walked aimlessly through the city streets, talking and laughing and stealing kisses under streetlights. When he finally took her home, he walked her to her door like a proper gentleman. "Can I see you tomorrow?" he asked. "And the day after that, and the day after that," she confirmed. "Good, because I have a lot of lost time to make up for." The next few weeks were a whirlwind. James made good on his promise, taking her to museums and shows, fancy restaurants and hole-in-the-wall diners. She met his sisters, Emily and Jennifer, who grilled her mercilessly before deciding they loved her. He came to Brooklyn and met Naomi, who gave him the best friend interrogation and grudgingly approved. But it was not all easy. The media got wind of the relationship after someone photographed them at a charity gala. Suddenly, Amelia was the driver dating the billionaire, and the headlines ranged from curious to cruel. Some portrayed it as a modern fairy tale, others as a calculated move on her part. The scrutiny was intense and invasive, photographers following them, reporters calling her phone. "I am sorry," James said after a particularly brutal tabloid story suggested she was only with him for money. They were at his penthouse, and she was pacing his living room in frustration. "I should have prepared you better for this. You cannot control what people say." "No, but I can control how we respond. We could make a statement, set the record straight. Or we could just live our lives and let them say what they want." She stopped pacing and looked at him. "James, if we are going to be together, I need to get used to this. And I need you to trust that I am strong enough to handle it." "I know you are strong enough. I just wish you did not have to be." She crossed to him and took his hands. "Every relationship has challenges. Ours just happens to include photographers and tabloids. But what we have, what we are building, is worth it." He pulled her into his arms, holding her tight. "You are amazing. You know that. I am learning to believe it." The scrutiny did not stop, but they learned to navigate it together. Amelia kept working, refusing to quit her job despite James's offer to support her financially. She liked her independence, her ability to contribute equally to the relationship. They found a rhythm, balancing his demanding schedule with her work, stealing moments whenever they could. 3 months into their relationship, James invited her to upstate New York for the weekend. They stayed at a small inn near the hiking trails where they had first kissed, spending the days exploring and the evenings by the fireplace. "I have something to tell you," he said on their last night as they sat watching the fire. Her heart jumped. "That sounds serious." "It is. Good serious, I hope." He turned to face her fully. "I talked to my board this week about succession planning. I am not stepping down, but I am restructuring my role, delegating more, creating systems so the company can run without me being there 18 hours a day." "James, you love that company. You built it from nothing." "I do love it, but I love you more. And I meant what I said about building a life outside of work. I want time for us. For music and hiking and lazy Sunday mornings. For all the things I have been putting off for 10 years. Tears stung her eyes. "You are sure?" "More sure than I have ever been about anything except you." She kissed him then, pouring everything she felt into it. When they finally broke apart, she was breathless. "I love you," she said. "I do not think I have said that clearly enough, but I love you, James Oakes. Every driven, workaholic, sweet, brilliant part of you. I love you too, Amelia Parker. Every practical, strong, beautiful, amazing part of you." They spent the rest of the night talking about the future, about dreams and possibilities, about building something together that was bigger than either of them alone. In the morning, they hiked back to the waterfall that had become their place, and James pulled out a small box. "It is too soon," he said quickly. "I know it is too soon, but I also know what I want, and I have never been good at waiting when I am certain about something." Amelia stared at the box, her heart racing. "James, this is not a proposal, not yet, but it is a promise." He opened the box to reveal a delicate ring with a single diamond. "A promise that I am in this completely, that I want forever with you whenever you are ready, that you are it for me." She took the ring with shaking hands and slipped it onto her right hand. "I want forever too, and maybe it is crazy and maybe it is too fast, but I have never been more certain of anything. So when I ask you for real, the answer will be yes. The answer will be yes." He swept her up in a kiss that felt like sealing a vow, even without official words. They stayed at the waterfall for hours, making plans and promises, both giddy with the certainty of their future. 6 months later, James proposed for real. He recreated their first date, taking her to the Italian restaurant, then the jazz club, then walking through the village. But instead of stopping at her apartment, he led her to a rooftop garden she had never seen before. Lights were strung between trees, and a pianist played softly in the corner. It was private and perfect, just the two of them under the stars. "Amelia Parker," he said, getting down on one knee with a new ring, this one custom designed with their initials engraved inside the band. "You took a temporary job and turned it into forever. You walked into my life as a driver and became my best friend, my partner, my everything. Will you marry me?" "Yes," she said through happy tears. "Yes, absolutely yes." The wedding was 6 months later, a small ceremony upstate at the inn where he had given her the promise ring. Just close friends and family, the way they both wanted it. Emily and Jennifer served as her bridesmaids since she had no sisters of her own, and James's best friend from college stood as his best man. They exchanged vows by the waterfall, promising to love each other through every adventure, every challenge, every ordinary Tuesday and extraordinary milestone. Amelia wore a simple white dress and carried tulips and roses, and James cried when he saw her walking toward him. They danced their first dance to the same jazz song from that first date, and everything felt exactly right. For their honeymoon, they took the month-long vacation that James had not taken in years, traveling through Europe without schedules or obligations. Amelia quit her driving job, finally ready to use her business degree in a new venture she and James were starting together, a foundation that helped children of factory workers afford college. It combined his resources with her passion and personal understanding, and they spent hours planning and dreaming about the impact they could make. When they returned to New York, they moved into a new home together, not his penthouse or her tiny studio, but a brownstone in Brooklyn with enough space for a family. They adopted a dog, a rescue mutt named Parker, who had James's eyes and Amelia's stubborn streak. A year into their marriage, Amelia found out she was pregnant. She told James over breakfast on a Sunday morning, just handing him the positive test while he drank his coffee. He stared at it for a long moment, then looked up at her with wonder in his eyes. "Really? Really?" He was around the table in a second, pulling her into his arms, laughing and crying at the same time. "We are having a baby. We are having a baby," she confirmed, and the joy in his face made her fall in love with him all over again. Their daughter, Sarah Grace, was born on a snowy January morning. She had James's green eyes and Amelia's dark hair, and from the moment she entered the world, she had both of them completely wrapped around her tiny fingers. James was a devoted father, cutting back his hours even more to be present for every milestone. Amelia thrived as a mother, somehow balancing the foundation work with the chaos of new parenthood. When Sarah was 2, they had a son, Thomas Michael. He was quieter than his sister, thoughtful and gentle, with a gift for taking things apart just like his father. Their family felt complete, the brownstone filled with laughter and toys and the beautiful mess of a well-loved life. On their 5th anniversary, James recreated that first week they had spent together, hiring a driver for both of them and spending a week at the conference center turned luxury resort. They hiked the same trails, visited the same waterfall, ate pie at the same diner. But this time, they had stories to tell, memories to share, a history built together. You ever think about how different things could have been? Amelia asked as they sat by the waterfall, their special place. If I had not been assigned to drive you that week, all the time. And then I thank whoever is in charge of the universe for terrible weather and last-minute schedule changes. He pulled her closer. You changed everything, Amelia. Before you, I was building an empire but not a life. You taught me the difference. You changed everything for me too. You saw me as more than just a driver, more than just someone surviving. You made me believe I could thrive. We saved each other, I think. Yeah, she agreed. We did. As the sun set over the mountains, painting the sky in oranges and pinks, Amelia reflected on the journey that had brought them here. 1 week, she had thought. Just 1 week of driving a billionaire to conferences and back. She had never imagined it would mean a lifetime of love, partnership, and building something beautiful together. But that was the thing about the best stories, she realized. They never went the way you planned. They surprised you, challenged you, transformed you in ways you never saw coming. All you could do was show up, be open, and have the courage to take a chance when something felt right. James kissed her temple, his arms secure around her shoulders. What are you thinking about? Just that I would do it all again. Every moment, every complication, every crazy, improbable step that led us here. Me too, though maybe with slightly better weather on that first drive. She laughed, the sound echoing across the water. The rain was perfect. It kept us trapped together long enough to actually talk. True. Remind me to send a thank you note to that storm system. They stayed until the stars came out, talking and dreaming about the future that stretched ahead of them. More children maybe, more adventures definitely, more ordinary moments that made up an extraordinary life. They had built something real from that one unexpected week, something that would last forever. On the drive back to the resort, James held her hand from the passenger seat, and Amelia smiled at the parallel to that first week. They had come full circle in so many ways, but the love between them only grew stronger, deeper, more certain with each passing day. That night, as they lay in bed talking about their kids and the foundation and plans for next year, Amelia felt a wave of gratitude so strong it almost hurt. For the storm that had brought them together, for the courage they had both shown in taking a chance, for every choice that had led them to this moment. Thank you, she said quietly. For what? For seeing me. For choosing me. For building this life with me. James turned to face her fully, his eyes serious in the dim light. Amelia, you are the best decision I ever made. Every good thing in my life traces back to you. I should be thanking you. Then we will thank each other. Deal. They fell asleep tangled together, hearts beating in sync, partners in every sense of the word. And in the morning, they would wake up and do it all again, building their forever one ordinary, extraordinary day at a time. Years later, when Sarah asked how they had met, James and Amelia would tell her the story of a week that changed everything. They would tell her about rain and highways and conversations that mattered, about taking chances when something felt right, about love that grew from respect and friendship into something unbreakable. So Mommy was your driver? Sarah would ask, trying to understand. Mommy was assigned to drive me for a week, James would correct gently. But what she really did was drive straight into my heart and never leave. Amelia would roll her eyes at the cheesy line, but she would be smiling, remembering that first day when she had wondered if her boss had lost his mind sending her out in the rain. She had driven thousands of passengers in her career, transported hundreds of important people to crucial meetings. But only one had looked at her like she mattered. Only one had seen past the uniform to the person underneath. Only one had turned a temporary assignment into forever. Thomas would eventually ask if they believed in fate, if they thought they were meant to find each other. Amelia and James would exchange a glance, the kind of wordless communication that came from years of partnership. "I think we were two people who chose to see each other," Amelia would say. "Who chose to take a risk, who chose to build something together. Fate might have put us in the same car, but we made the choice to stay." And that, in the end, was the real story. Not a fairy tale about a billionaire and his driver, but a love story about two people who had the courage to choose each other, who built a life on foundation of respect and friendship and genuine connection, who proved that forever could start with a temporary assignment if you were brave enough to let it. On their 10th anniversary, James had a gift made for Amelia, a painting of that first morning, the black Mercedes in the rain, the city stretched out behind them. At the bottom, he had the artist include a simple inscription that captured everything. 1 week assigned. Forever chosen. It hung in their home, a reminder of where they started and how far they had come. And every time Amelia looked at it, she remembered the rain hammering the windshield, the green eyes meeting hers in the rearview mirror, the moment she had decided to take a chance on something that felt impossibly right. The best decision she ever made, she would think. And she would smile, knowing James was somewhere in the house thinking exactly the same thing about her. Their story was not perfect. They had arguments and stressful days, moments of doubt and periods of challenge. But through it all, they had each other. They had built something real and lasting from that one unexpected week, proving that sometimes the most important journeys are not the ones you plan, but the ones you are brave enough to take when opportunity knocks. And every anniversary, they would return to that waterfall upstate, to the place where James had given her the promise ring, where they had gotten married, where they brought their children to show them the beauty of commitment and choice. It was their sacred space, the physical reminder of everything they had built together. Standing there on their 15th anniversary, Sarah and Thomas playing nearby while Parker dozed in the sun, James pulled Amelia close. "Still happy you said yes to that first drive?" he asked. "Best assignment I ever got," she confirmed. "Even with all the complications, the media, the scrutiny, the challenging of two different worlds, especially with all that, because it made us stronger, it made us sure." She looked up at him, at the face she loved more with each passing year. "You are worth every complication, James Oakes. And you, Amelia Oakes, are worth everything." They kissed as the waterfall rushed behind them, as their children laughed and played, as the future spread out bright and certain. 1 week had become a lifetime, just as the promise suggested. And they would spend every day of that lifetime grateful for the rain, the assignment, the courage to choose love even when logic said it was too fast, too complicated, too impossible. Because the best things in life, they had learned, were often the things that made no sense on paper, but made perfect sense in the heart. And their hearts had known from that very first drive that they were meant to find each other, meant to build something beautiful together, meant to prove that forever could start in the most unexpected ways. 1 week assigned. Forever chosen. It was more than an inscription on a painting. It was the truth of their lives, the foundation of their family, the proof that love could bloom anywhere if you were brave enough to let it grow.